Nazem Kadri celebrates game number 1,000 in the NHL with a goal and a win as the Flames beat down the Blue Jackets. Hey everyone, welcome into Hot Topics. Rob Wong joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writers Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin. And guys, not going to lie, feeling a little bit old watching Nazem Kadri play game number 1,000. Feels like just yesterday I was watching him make his Maple Leafs debut, but here he is with a goal as well on just such a great night for him, his family, the Flames organization. Wes, we'll start with you. Nazem Kadri, when he first came to Calgary, there was a lot of excitement, of course. This is a guy that has won it all. He's been a really strong player in the NHL. What was the last night like for you, and just to see him celebrate this honor with this team?
You know, these are always really cool. And when I say always, I think, it's so important to point out how rare it is to see a silver stick ceremony in the NHL. This is the 13th player to hit 1,000 games on behalf of the Calgary Flames. And so you're talking about a franchise that's been in Calgary for getting pretty close to 50 years. And this is the 13th time we've had one of these celebrations. And, certainly with Nazem Kadri's profile and what he's meant to the NHL and what he means now to the Calgary Flames, I think there was probably maybe a layer of extra special to last night. My big takeaway, and I suppose it's probably always this way when you have these special events, but my big takeaway is probably just going to be what it meant to Nas. Like, this is a guy who, through the later stages of his career, has been really good at keeping that even keel. It's like, nothing gets his heart rate too high or too low, and yet you could really tell how much he was soaking up everything last night, whether it was his daughter reading the starting lineup in the locker room, whether it was the impact of that goal, whether it was going back out on the ice for his first star salute. There was just so much that went into it, and you could tell he wanted to kind of cherish every moment. And for a guy who's had the impact that he has now, 311 NHL goals, and I'm sure going to add quite a few more to that tally before it's all said and done, a really neat way to kind of see him celebrated. And, as I'm sure Danny will probably get into, the players talked yesterday about how you can kind of spoil these events for somebody if it doesn't go well. And so good on the Flames to kind of step up and play a heck of a hockey game for him last night too.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, if seeing the ceremony made you feel old, imagine being in the media scrum where there were just eight young children joining, super excited to celebrate their dad and their uncle. I've labeled it the cutest media scrum, definitely of the season, if not ever. It was so cool seeing Kadri's family there and seeing how proud they were. I wrote a lot about Nas this week, and one of the things that I did feel like I wanted to write about a little bit was his impact on Muslim hockey players as well as sort of South Asian hockey players, and it's been profound seeing a guy who looks like them, and representation matters, and I think that's been a really, really important part of his career. And I mean, I don't really have a ton of personal anecdotes about Kadri. Like, he's not best friends with the media, nor is anybody. That's not a criticism, but I mean, I just think he's been such a consummate pro since he arrived in Calgary. I don't think when he signed here, he signed to be on a team that was going to be in last place in the NHL and missing the playoffs every year. The one thing you will hear from people is that Nazem Kadri is a player who is at his best when the stakes are the highest. And I mean, we're talking like Nathan MacKinnon saying that. We're talking, real deal hockey superstars saying that. And it's disappointing that we haven't gotten to see Kadri in the playoffs. But with that said, I mean, there were sections of the season last year where the Flames were struggling to score, and it felt like Kadri's offense was dragging them throughout particularly January and keeping them in the fight. So I do think he has really, really earned the respect of Calgary hockey fans, of the Calgary hockey community. I know we're going to get into whether, you want the last years of a guy's like this career to be in a market where the playoffs and certainly Stanley Cup contention may not be realistic. But I just can't say enough about what it's been like, A, to work with him, and B, just to watch him as an athlete, because he really has he's been central to the Flames not being a disaster, frankly, over the last couple of years, and it's been really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just think back to his early days in Toronto. There were questions about his character and whether he would ever mature, and it's been incredible to watch his evolution as not only a player but as a person. So you brought it up there, Danny. The future, I think, is a big question mark here for Kadri. His name's been swirling in trade rumors seemingly for a while now. He does still have a pretty big ticket left on his contract at this point. What do you see as far as his future in Calgary, at least in the immediate sense?
So it's a hard question because you never know exactly where those rumors are coming from. And what I will say is that Kadri has never publicly suggested he is unhappy in Calgary. In fact, he's actually come out quite strongly and said the opposite and said, I like playing in Calgary. I like the Flames organization. I want to be a part of it. It's just when they are in last place and he is, in his mid 30s, he's got time left. I'm not suggesting the end is nigh, but it's probably closer to the end than the beginning, that's for sure. And if they're trading a guy away, a guy like Rasmus Anderson, it's basic math. Why would Kadri want to be here? Why would the Flames not want to collect young assets for him? So, it on some level feels almost inevitable. But like saying that implies that I know something and that I think Kadri wants out. I don't know anything. I'm just doing like how do you typically build these things? And it's trading away your incredibly valuable for the playoffs pieces to get young players. I think Nazem Kadri would be a big loss. I think guys like Zane Prek, I think these young players are learning from Nazem Kadri, and the Flames organization loves having a guy who is that competitive, who they can point to and be like, hey, be more like Nas as these players try to figure out their young way. So I am not implying that I have any idea, nor that I think they should necessarily trade him, but I think that probably it's where this goes eventually.
Yeah, I think, importantly, not only has Nazem Kadri not signaled publicly that he wants out of Calgary, but to the best of my knowledge and asking around, I don't think he's privately ever expressed much interest in leaving Calgary either. And I guess where it's going to be fascinating to see where this goes is whether that changes if the Flames can't climb out of last place here this season. Not Nazem Kadri at 35 wants another opportunity to compete for a Stanley Cup. And I think it's important, like the Flames are 4-9-2 this morning. And at every coffee shop in Calgary, people are writing them out of the playoffs. And understandably so, it's a really tough hill to climb. And yet the players are kind of always the last ones to be there, if that makes any sense. Like the players and management, they're not conditioned to look at 4-9-2 and say, maybe next year we'll get them next year. And so I think there's probably a little bit of patience required with this. It's going to take a little while for the maybe feelings on either side of this to settle out, to see where this team maybe is in mid-December. But as Danny pointed out, and I'll just reiterate, if the Calgary Flames decide to put Nazem Kadri on the trade market, there is going to be heaps of interest. It is really, there's a few sort of, I guess, specific niches of players that are very difficult to find around the trade deadline, and kind of stalwart second line center would be one of those. Nazem Kadri's been a first line center in Calgary, and so if a contender can plug him into the exact role that he played so well with the Colorado Avalanche when they won the Cup in 22, you can see the appeal there. And so where it goes, it's really hard to say, but this is going to be a valuable chip. If the Flames decide that it's time to move Nazem Kadri, whether that's triggered by Nas saying, hey, what about a new opportunity? Or that's simply triggered by Craig Conroy looking at it and saying, this is too good of an opportunity for us to pass up as we try to accumulate assets who are eventually going to make us a contender. This is the type of player that commands a haul on the market, and it'll be really interesting to see whether the Flames get themselves to the point that they say, yeah, we got to do it.
Well, you mentioned the record right now sitting at 4-9-2. There's just so much parity right now across the league, and especially in the Western Conference. They're only 6 points out of a playoff spot. So if that decision is going to be made, it might not be for a bit here with the way things are going around the National Hockey League. But
if I can just add, the parity makes the trade part more appealing too, because it just means less sellers, right? If you have this sort of parity, and there's been some really surprising starting teams in the NHL that we're all kind of expecting the bottom to fall out on a little bit. But, if you get toward the Olympic break and there's only 3 or 4 teams who are shopping some assets, then suddenly those are worth even more. And so I think the parity probably makes that internal debate at the Saddle Dome even that much more difficult.
Yeah, I imagine it's a topic we're going to be talking about quite a bit as we head towards that Olympic break, as you mentioned. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you on the next one.